This is Donald Parham. You're listening to Chargers Unleashed, part of the LAFB Network. Stay jiggy.
Hey, this is Chris from the second, Chargers outside linebacker, and make sure you check out Chargers Unleashed.
Shout out to Chargers Unleashed, Sebastian Joseph. They know the vibes. We outside.
You checking in with Mike Williams from the LA Chargers, and you're tuning in to Chargers Unleashed.
You're listening to the Chargers Unleashed podcast with your host, Dan Wolkenstein and Jake Hefner.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. Today's show, of course, is being brought to you by BetOnline, Charger Bold Family, Rock Solid Sports Memorabilia, and Athletic Greens. If this is your first time tuning into the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein, Week 18 is finally upon us. We already know that the Chargers are bound for the playoffs. Still a few questions to be answered. But everything has just been a very surreal, very interesting type of week, not just from the standpoint of heading into Week 18, because obviously Dan and I were on the show early Monday afternoon talking about the Chargers coming off their victory against the Los Angeles Rams. And then a few hours later, everything changed. Obviously, everybody knows at this point what took place with the Damar Hamlin situation in the Bills-Cincinnati Bengals game. And thankfully today, the great news that we've been waiting to hear for the last 3 days, as far as the progressive recovery from Damar Hamlin in the hospital. Obviously there's still ways to go, but the neurological functions sound to be fully intact. His movement of his extremities is back intact. From what I heard, Dan, the latest was that he was still on oxygen, but it was progressing in the right direction. So absolutely fantastic after what we witnessed on Monday Night Football after that incident to see this type of progress. Continued prayers for Damar Hamlin, his family, and his teammates in that type of situation.
Yeah, that was scary. I think that kind of put a lot of stuff in perspective, I think, for a lot of people, myself included. You see so often these games you take for granted, even when folks get injured, within an hour or two, they're usually either stable or they're recovering or whatever it is. And for, I think, the unknown to happen like that, it kind of brings the humanity into it again. And so NFL games took a back seat this week because of what Damar was going through. And now seeing the outpour of support that he and his family have gotten, the toy drive, I think, is up to like past 7+ million, which is incredible to see. Can't wait to see his face. I would love to see his face when he sees that. It's just been a tough week. I think it's been a tough week for sports. I think it's been a tough week for obviously those two teams and for all teams. But you heard from Damar, I believe it was today, or his father, who had said that he would like the team to move forward. If it was up to him, they would play on Sunday and kind of move on. I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's what the team heard. I think that's what they got some solace in. And so it looks like they're preparing, and as we all will, prepare for Sunday to include NFL football games. So it was a wild week. And I think it kind of shook the core for good reason. So as you said, thoughts and prayers have gone out all week to them, his family, the teams, the staff, the organization, everything. So, I think both of us were kind of at a loss for words for a while. I remember I called you on the way home from the gym, and I was like, did you see what just happened? I couldn't leave the gym. It was just, I think it caused everybody to kind of stop moving for a bit.
Yeah. Well, now as Damar Hamlin continues to progress in his health, the NFL obviously has their hands full with trying to figure out how does the playoff seeding between the Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, and the Cincinnati Bengals play out. But the Chargers have their own playoff scenarios that they obviously need to focus on. Could this game on Sunday against the Denver Broncos be something that the Chargers actually need to play their starters for? Will it be that meaningful? Or will the Chargers find out by 1 p.m. this Sunday that Justin Herbert can take a break? Who knows? A lot of things have been in flux over this week in terms of what could possibly play out as the Chargers pursue to lock up the 5th seed heading into the playoffs.
So we'll discuss the matchup with the Chargers and the Broncos. We'll discuss all of those different scenarios that affect the Chargers. And we'll discuss all of it with you as we kind of go through this Week 18 before the Chargers head to the playoffs, which, like, imagine the euphoria we said at the beginning of the season. And Jake, week 18.
I'm surprised you haven't made a shirt yet.
I'm waiting on you. Would you wear it first?
What do you mean for it?
I'd make it.
It's your slogan. You use it all season.
I know, but I would like to see the pessimists have to wear it. I think that'd be the fun part.
Well, okay. tell you what you could do, Dan. You want to come up, maybe next week when we get into the playoffs, you can come up with a bet line wager that you think, that you believe that you could sucker me into, that I'll take. Then you will be responsible for making the shirt. And tell you what, the pessimist will wear it. Fair enough?
Fair. Cool. And sidebar, I don't know if you're this smart, but very clever the way that you put bet and believe in the same sentence. Great segue, Jake. Let's talk about our friends over at Bet Online.
I have my moments, Dan. I tell my wife all the time, I get 5 Genius cards a year. Problem is I blow through them in about 3 months, so then I can't use them all for the remaining 9 months of the year.
How many do I get? How many do I get with you here? Are the 5 Genius cards just with her, or is that like in life?
No. That was just with her.
Oh, so, how many do I get for you?
We'll talk about that later. Anyways.
We burned one. We know that much.
Maybe we burned one. Yeah, maybe we burned one. But anyways, want to remind everybody about our friends over at Bet Online. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends over at Bet Online. And as your continued source for all sports wagering information, Bet Online features live betting, free contests, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports and events, whether that's NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, or even golf. Head on over to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit, and make sure to use that promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your rewards. Bet Online, where the game starts.
So, Jake, I do want to share one of our sponsors, Rock Solid Sports Memorabilia. Jay Rock, huge friend of the show. One of the very, very great sponsors we have, helps us with a lot of the giveaways that we do. They are actually doing, Jake, a Justin Herbert signing. Your one and only Justin Herbert's going to be signing a exclusive with Rock Solid Sports Memorabilia, and you have your opportunity to get anything signed. It could be a mini helmet, it could be a full helmet, it could be jerseys, it could be posters, whatever you want. In order to get involved, you can either DM us on Twitter, we can give you guys the details, but essentially you would need to mail in whatever product you would like Justin Herbert to sign no later than January 14th for the signing to occur, and then they will mail it back to you. You can basically do, like I said before, anything, any flat up to 16 by 20. Minis, bobbleheads, I believe, are $219, and flats over 16 by 20 are $249. Custom helmets, everything else, there's some different upcharges. But we'll be posting the flyer on Twitter and Instagram so you guys can have a look at it. But Justin Herbert is going to be doing a signing. Get your Justin Herbert signed memorabilia exclusive from Chargers Unleashed and also from Rock Solid Sports Memorabilia. You'll see more news there soon. Jake, so if you're a betting man, do you think that this game between the Chargers and the Broncos is going to matter?
It depends. I mean, the way that things are looking like right now in Baltimore is that Lamar Jackson will not be playing this finale of this season, which lines up very good for the Cincinnati Bengals. And the biggest thing here, Dan, is that I believe it was Dan Graziano that was talking about this on Get Up I think it was maybe this morning that he was talking about it. That was a key thing to note, that up until, I think, was it Tuesday, I think is when they made the adjustment to the time of that game. That game was basically TBD. Nobody knew really what time that was going to start. And for the fact that they moved it up into the 10 a.m. Pacific slot, that kind of gives you an indication on what they feel as far as just the designation of the Bengals, essentially through all of this playoff seeding mess, that they will basically win the AFC North. And that is why they shifted that game into that time frame.
And so now, for folks who don't know, who haven't caught on, Chargers can clinch the 5 seed without playing a football game on Sunday if the Bengals and Ravens game ends in a Bengals
win. Correct.
So if Bengals beat them, which is in the earlier time slot, Chargers can find out before kickoff, and then they can decide what to do.
Yes. So a lot of moving parts. You'll know who the Chargers' opponent is after Saturday night when the Titans play the Titans play the Jaguars for the AFC South division. So you will know who potentially the Chargers will be facing after that game.
If they get the 5 seed.
If they get the 5 seed, correct. And then Sunday will come and determine it. So you may know your opponent, and then you may know if you have to even play your starters come Sunday. So it may look like a JV game that you would watch at your local high school, or this game may have a lot of meaning behind it depending on what happens earlier on in the day.
So I have a question for you, Jake. And I saw this, I forget what show I saw this on, but it was an interesting discussion about what's more important, health or seeding. And so let's say, for example, that the Bengals lose, however that happens. Let's say they lose. And the Chargers can either have the 6th seed, and let's say you and I play, or they could go for the 5th seed and let everyone out there and risk an injury or 2 or whatever. Who knows? What's more important to you? Putting everybody out there to try to get that 5 seed, or saying, screw it, I don't care who we play. I do care, but I don't care as much as our guys just being healthy and out there.
I mean, you asked me on paper, because that would be interesting on how, because I even with Baltimore winning, that would basically secure Baltimore into the 5th spot. They would. I don't think that they would flux into the 3 spot. I think that that's already locked up by the Bengals. If you tell me on paper who would I like to play, either the winner or of Tennessee, Jacksonville, or have to go on the road to Cincinnati.
And in reality, it could be Cincy, Buffalo, or Kansas City at this point. We have no idea.
Right. Just depending on what happens with that playoff scenario. But if any of those 3 teams or the option to play Jacksonville, Tennessee winner, I will take that one, because there's no question marks with the 5th seed on who you will be playing. It will be the 4th seed. So, yeah, I understand that whole risk factor question in terms of health goes, but in that type of scenario, hell yeah, I'll battle to get that.
Okay, so you'd battle to get that 5 seed at the risk of losing a premier talent and play a player. Yeah, I don't know.
When seeding's on the line, yes,
I agree. Yes, though you can't play scared. You can't play scared. You got to go out there. Okay, but other scenario, Ravens lose. Then there's a question of do you rest everyone? Should everyone be out there for a bit? Should there be any playing time? Should we see any of the starters? What's kind of your if you were Staley, what would you do?
I would treat it the same way that I would treat it as a preseason game. Maybe you give Herbert and the first string offense just a couple series, and then you get him out of the game. I do believe in those type of scenarios where you rest your starters, and then especially if you're playing, especially for teams who got the bye week, and then you come back and then all of a sudden you're just flat because you had 2 weeks of rest. I'm a firm believer in that can definitely affect the game. So I don't want the Chargers, who, again, from an offensive standpoint that I have talked about ad nauseum, as far as the inconsistencies goes with this offense, I don't want them to go into the playoffs just kind of with cold, with essentially a mini bye week for their starters. I would like to get them some reps at least. So not playing a full 4 quarters, you play them a couple series in that first quarter and get them out of there, I would be okay with that.
Would you be okay with doing that if the Ravens won?
If the Ravens won, no, then you got to go for it. You have to go a full 4 quarters.
I just hope the Ravens lose, because I just don't want to have to be sitting there and just wait until the very last play.
I get it. I get it.
Okay.
But again, a lot of question marks in the air as far as what type of game we're going to see. So let's break it down hypothetically. Let's go on. You're talking about a Denver Broncos team that has had its ups and down roller coasters of the last 2 weeks, essentially 2.5 weeks ago, firing Nathaniel Hackett as their head coach, a lot of other coordinators in flux. They're basically, when you do it at this point of the year, you kind of light a fire under the team and the rest of the coaches to basically say, okay, your job's on the line right now. Other than the $250 million quarterback that they had paid in that organization, you kind of get some people motivated. And last week against the Kansas City Chiefs, Denver Broncos played them tough for the second time that they have in I think it's about a month. They played them pretty close in proximity over the last month and a half. But Russell Wilson had one of his better games that he has had this season, even with 2 interceptions. Still looked like the flashes of the Russell Wilson of old. So you go back to the first matchup between the Denver Broncos and the Chargers, which, especially from an offensive standpoint, was one of the most ugly displays from both teams. And the Chargers come away with a narrow victory in that one. You would hope to see some improvements, especially what you have seen from this defense over the last 4 weeks, and hopefully with a little bit of the resurgence and balance with this run game to complement Justin Herbert in the passing game. Again, Denver's defense is legit. Do not make 2 mistakes about it. One of the better defenses in the league. But this is a very different Denver Bronco teams in terms of health than what the Chargers saw from them earlier in the season. So it's almost like the shoes on the other foot, because the Chargers were really the banged up team earlier on in the season.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really interesting looking at kind of like the I guess the yearly stats, if you will. Like you mentioned the Broncos defense is no joke. Like they're ranked 7th, they're a top 10 defense. They've been that way all year. I'd argue they're top 5 defense. Chargers defense though, 19th, middle of the road. Like surprise considering where we were at like week 10. Their passing, not great, 19th. Rushing, 22nd. Chargers, on the other hand, 4th best passing team, 30th in rushing, and 9th in total offense, with the Broncos being 24th in offense. So the Broncos have struggled on offense, but like you mentioned, as of late, they're kind of starting to come on.
It's a smorgasbord of injuries over there in Denver, because you put Marlon Mack on injury reserve. You played Dalton Reisner, one of their offensive linemen, on injury reserve as of today. Their other tackle, Calvin Anderson, did not practice. Who else? Kendall Hinton, their wide receiver, did not practice. Defensive tackle DJ Jones, Jonathan Kongbo, Eric Subert, Eric Tomlinson, all those guys did not practice. And you still have another handful that were still limited on this Thursday's practice. So they have, and Jerry Jones is, or Jerry Jeudy is included in that conversation as well. So yeah, I mean, you have a handful of guys here from some of their really important players, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that could be limited for this game. I still think that they'll probably, when it comes crunch time, that they'll give it a go and they'll play. Mm-hmm. But still, divisional opponent. I think under the circumstances that the Denver Broncos have gone through from a coaching standpoint, and whatever you want to say about Russell Wilson and the disappointing year that he has had in this season, the flashes were there last week, and I think is the desire for him to correct those mistakes there. I think they are, but you just definitely don't want it to be at the Chargers' expense. So
wait till next year.
It really will be an interesting team as to say, well, which version of Russell Wilson is going to show up last week's against the Kansas City Chiefs, or the version that we have seen all of the 2022 NFL season.
In a perfect world, Jake, what I would like to see is this game not matter. And the only thing that I'm focusing on watching is Chargers rush defense. I can care less if they give up 500 yards passing. I know our passing defense is fine. I want to focus on rush defense, and I just want to see our offense versus their defense. Like I don't care how they do on, like, I just want to see, like, can the offense click? Maybe that's the first couple series. If so, sweet, I'm out. And can our defense stop the run? If so, sweet, I'm out.
For the first couple of series, I was going to say, because if you're expecting
for the first couple series,
if this game doesn't matter and you're expecting the 2s and the 3s to stop the run, I think you're going to be very disappointed.
No. I'm saying for whatever the starters, if the starters are out there, that's really all I'm looking for.
Okay, so let's take it now. Let's flip it a little bit, Dan. So let's just say that this game does end up meaning something, that you do have to play your starters in this game. Based off of what we have seen over this past month, essentially, defensive resurgence has been huge as it relates to this Chargers 4-game winning streak. Justin Herbert started to get back on track. No interceptions, no sacks taken last week against the Rams, threw two touchdowns to Gerald Everett and Donald Parham in the end zone. Obviously, Austin Ekeler was a machine at the running game last week. And there is this drive from Brandon Staley and Joe Lombardi to make this more of a balanced offense. The run game for the Chargers has definitely been in question as they have been on this path for this playoff push that they are going into. So I know that they're dedicated to improving that aspect of their offense, but let's just call it what it is, Dan. Obviously, first time that these two teams met, very ugly performance offensively from both quarterbacks. So if this game ends up meaning something on Sunday, what are some things, whether it's key matchups, things of improvement that you'd like to see? Tell me what you would be 50,000 foot view as far as to defeat the Broncos and secure the 5th seed. What would it take?
I'm not necessarily sure I know what would it take. If the Chargers can play the way they played the last 4 weeks, they win. I'll tell you that much. I don't think it's going to be a Russell Wilson beat us game. Like I think it's going to be, if we lose, we're going to give up whatever 175, 200 yards rushing. And so I think that's going to be a big piece, in my opinion. The Chargers pass defense has been legit all year. Like I think they're holding opponents to opposing quarterbacks the past month to 120 yards per game passing net. Like it's absurd how good they've looked. They're giving up no points in the past 2 games in the second half. Like they're that good. No third down conversions in the past 2 games in the second half. Like they've just been elite. I think they lose in the other categories. I think they lose if they lose on defense in terms of allowing rushes. And then if the offense, we're going up against a good defense. If the offense can't score points. If the Chargers can play the way they've played the last month, they'll win. If the offense can click, I think they're good. But the thing is, Jake, even if the Broncos ball out, right? Like I think the Chargers are still better. It's about if the Chargers can play up to their level. And it's been that way all season. Now, earlier in the season, Chargers were decimated by injury, and so their level wasn't nearly as high as we would like it to be. But now, Joey Bosa no longer has food poisoning. Derwin James, in theory, should be back out there if the game matters.
If it matters, yes.
You're hearing rumblings about positive signs for Rashawn Slater, not necessarily for this game, but moving forward. What that means, who knows? So, to me, this I'm not saying this is a get-right game. The Chargers should just blow the doors off of them. But I think the Chargers should be focusing on those specific things. Obviously, they want to win, but win that way. Like, this is one of those games where if they lose and they end up getting that 6th seed, but their rush defense was amazing, and their offense, they lose 45-44, I don't know if I would be okay with the loss, but wow, okay. They gave up 44 yards rushing and allowed 500 yards passing. That's an anomaly.
Yeah. I mean, if you remember that first game, Dan, remember the Broncos jumped out to a 10-point lead. This was one of those games.
I got a text from Jake. Said game's over.
This is one of those games where the Chargers came back from their double-digit deficits they decided to do a couple times this year. But if you remember that game, Dan, I mean, obviously, there's a couple of intricate pieces here that if this game ends up meaning something and these guys play that you didn't have the first time around. Keenan Allen did not play the first matchup against the Denver Broncos this year. Joey Bosa was not in there against the first matchup for the Denver Broncos this year. And as far as the defense goes, that after those 10 points were scored, they basically put the brakes on the Broncos offense the remainder of that game for the most part. Mm-hmm. So, and now, like we had said on our Monday podcast, this resurgence in this defense over the past month, when we're talking about guys like Michael Davis, Kenneth Murray, Nasir Taylor, Alohi Gilman, guys that are not household names for this defense that are playing well, when you can get them playing into a unit that has your headline players, now you got something. So I'm like you, Dan. I think if the Chargers offense comes into the way that they did, specifically if you have a mixture of a game plan the way you had it against Miami, because Denver still has guys, even with Bradley Chubb not there, that can get after the quarterback. You come into this game with a kind of a mixed plan the way you had with Miami and a little bit of the game plan that you had against the Rams, and you mold that together. And again, if this game ultimately means something, you should be able to take care of business. Now, defensively, Dan, again, depending on what Russell Wilson we are going to see. I'm about to ask the question, obviously, what would you like to see from this defense in terms of whether it's key matchups or final stats or, just in general, because the Chargers defense has been shutting people out in the second half. The last 2 games obviously yield 0 points to the Indianapolis Colts, yield 0 points to the Rams in the second half of their matchup. And obviously, we're talking about 2 very different teams in comparison to the Denver Broncos, maybe in terms of talent and quarterback aspects. But Dan, real quick, before I want your response on this, let's just recap real quick what the Denver Broncos went through from an organization standpoint before they played the Chiefs and just lost by 3, mind you. So
in Arrowhead,
after Nathaniel Hackett was fired, new interim head coach Jerry Rosburg fired 2 coaches on his staff, benched his kick returner, switched offensive play callers, and activated a tight end who caught his first touchdown of the year. This was all within this time frame and took place last week, and the Denver Broncos only lost by 3, 27-24 to the Kansas City Chiefs. So given that, and again, like I said, sometimes coaches firing, you look at what has taken place over in Carolina with interim head coach Steve Wilkes and the job that he has done, almost getting his team to the playoffs. Sometimes it lights a fire underneath the rest of the coaches and the rest of the players. So again, hopefully in this scenario, you don't want to see this happen at the Chargers' expense if this game ultimately ends up meaning something. But Denver's offense to the Chargers' defense, Dan, what are you looking at?
Denver offense, Chargers defense. I think this is going to be another linebacker game. I think you're going to see a linebacker safety performance where if they can stay steady, if Drew Tranquill, Kenneth Murray can stay steady, if Alohi Gilman can kind of continue to play the way he's playing, Nasir Adderley can continue. Kenneth Murray kind of had a down week last week, just being honest. So did Nasir Adderley, in my opinion. If they can play solid and not give up those chunk plays, I think that's where the Chargers win or lose. If you see huge yak in this game, if you see huge missed tackles in this game, if you see those numbers high, I worry. But it's I don't know, it's a weird feeling, Jake, because it's weird. I don't know how to feel about this game. Like, I'm so used to being so stressed out, hoping to get a playoff berth, that like these last couple weeks have been kind of anticlimactic is the wrong word, but the stress level and like the urgency as a person covering the team or as a fan, I feel like is not there like it's been the past several years. And so like, it's just, I don't know. Does that make sense to you? Am I talking my ass?
No, I fully understand. Where I would say, again, to be concerned, because as somebody said during the leading up to the Indianapolis Colts game, Jonathan Taylor, no problem. And thankfully for the Chargers, they didn't have to worry about the run game much because they jumped out to such an insurmountable lead. The defense was creating turnovers in that game. But the Denver Broncos now, with Marlon Mack going on IR, currently have Latavius Murray and Chase Edmonds in their backfield as you're starting.
No more Melvin Gordon.
No more Melvin Gordon. I don't give a damn what age these guys are. I still wouldn't put it past the fact that the Chargers,
Hello, James Conner,
went back to their old ways last week against the Los Angeles Rams, could still yield some chunk plays in terms of rushing yards in this game. So you do that. And again, Russell Wilson had 2 rushing touchdowns last week on top of his 1 passing that he threw while throwing for 222 yards. I think from a wide receiver standpoint, matchup, Dan, I think if you were to go into this with the same type of mentality that you went into with the Miami Dolphins, played a little bit more press coverage, defensive backs against Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, I think that you can get them off the snide, and I think that you can take them away. And kind of as that translates to what you were mentioning, it's going to be a linebacker matchup. Everything's going to be right there in the middle. So what are you going to do to cover their tight ends?
Isn't it kind of interesting? You say some of those numbers, and we talk about like the resurgence of Russell Wilson in this Broncos offense. And Russ
last week.
No, right. But I'm saying even last week, but like those numbers, you said 220 something yards.
222 yards, 26 to 38, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and then 4 rushes for 27 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns.
And that's a resurgence. Like that's a down week. That's a down week for any of the good quarterbacks. Like it's
one of the better games of Russell Wilson this season. Yes,
it's just interesting that is like the banner game for him. And realistically, that would probably be like a low point for Justin Herbert this year. 222 yards. He hasn't done that much this season. I don't know. Jake, we can't go any further without talking about our good friends over at Athletic Greens. Now, today, I went off the cuff, Jake.
Oh yeah, well,
off the rails.
Well, you didn't. Your wife kind of threw you a curveball a little bit.
She did, and I'm not sure. I haven't got a chance to ask her, but today's AG1 from Athletic Greens, helping me with all my vitamins and minerals, helping me with my gut health. I've been doing it for the last couple months. Jake and I both have. Instead of the water, 3 ice cubes, shake it up. She actually put pineapple juice, mix it in there with the AG1, shake it up. I don't know the ice cube ratio yet. I'll have to get back to you on that. But it was a nice little plot twist. I liked it.
Sounds good. I'm sure that was a nice surprise. Well, as Dan said, we've both been taking AG1 now for about the past, 2 months. I'm very much into keeping track of my health, obviously pushing 40. I've always enjoyed going to the gym for the past 20 years, but as I have said continuously on this show, my diet still to this day has never, ever, ever been the best.
What'd you have for lunch today?
Chipotle. And it's not a joke.
I'm hungry.
That's not a joke. I'm 100% serious. Now, at least, maybe some people would put Chipotle on the healthier side of fast food.
It depends on how you order it.
As I would, I like cheese? Yeah, who the hell doesn't? I mean, for crying out loud, yes, I douse the cheese on there. Yes, I do the mild salsa. Yes, I did a chicken bowl. Who cares? It was delicious.
Double chicken?
No, I didn't do double chicken. So maybe I robbed myself of a little bit of extra protein there. But just in general, yes, in a nutshell, my diet has never been the best. And I definitely slack on getting the essential vitamins, minerals, and nutritions that I need. So definitely from a consumer standpoint, from my experience, AG1 has been great in terms of getting all of these vital nutritions that you need, especially when it comes to improving your overall gut health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens right now is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is go and visit athleticgreens.com/Chargers Unleashed. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Chargers Unleashed to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
Now, Jake, I'm going to completely take this off the rails for a second. Sidebar story about Chipotle. My wife was telling me a story when she went in Chipotle once, and there was a person in front of her ordering a bowl. And I forget what all the other stuff was in terms of the meats and the proteins and the veggies and rice. They get to the toppings part, and they ask for salsa. They asked for mild, medium, whatever. I think it's a sour cream. They asked for sour cream. The person asked for more sour cream. They put another dollop of sour cream.
Mm.
The person asked for more sour cream. And then more sour cream. We're talking like 6, 7, 8 ladles of sour cream on their Chipotle bowl. And Kristen called my wife, Kristen, she called me mortified. And it basically was chicken swimming in a bathtub of sour cream. At some point, there's too much, right? Like, there's too much of something. Like, for you, at some point, there's too much cheese, right?
No, there's never enough cheese. No, cheese is an exception in that circumstance. Never enough cheese, but I can understand this. I mean, I'm going to assume that they weren't like gypping this person on the sour cream, which was then causing them to ask to put on more.
They were
normal. Okay. I love sour cream as much as the next person, but
that's soup.
Yeah. Would you like chicken with your sour cream? Jeez.
It's so gross. Literally, my wife called me just mortified. She's like, I need to share with you what I just witnessed because it was so bad. It was so bad. It's like a horror film. Anyways, Jake, so predictions. Okay. Let's go both ways. Let's say the game matters. Let's say the game matters. So Baltimore wins somehow. Chargers play. Final score prediction.
Tell me what. Why don't you go ahead and come back to me?
The problem I have with this is it's a division game, and these games are never blowouts. And so if the Chargers have to play, I think it's going to go 4 quarters. I don't think it'll be a blowout. It gets decided in the last 10 minutes. I think the Chargers win it, but there's a lot of risks there. And that's not going to be an easy one. Put it that way. So if they have to play, I think Chargers win 24 to 20.
See, I have it close like you. I was going to go a little bit lower. Mine was going to be 20-17. I still think it's going to be, again, divisional game standpoint. I think Denver's defense will keep it close, but I also think that the resurgence from this Chargers team, both offensively and defensively, with the resurgence of Keenan Allen and Joey Bosa, is going to be enough to put the Denver Broncos away if this game ultimately ends up meaning something and you have to play them. So I think it'll be a low-scoring game, but I definitely think the trends that you've seen lately of the Chargers defense playing the way that they have, keeping their opponents under at 17 points or less over the last 4 weeks will continue. And I think that you'll see just enough to be done. Again, 4 quarters of football. Hopefully you see another third quarter touchdown take place. Obviously, let's keep that trend going. But I think if it doesn't matter, I think when it comes down to it, if the Chargers have to play their starters, that Brandon Staley will have his guys prepared and they will know what's at stake.
So you have a win 2017 if they have to play.
Yes.
Okay, let's say they don't play. Or they don't have to play. Let's say the game does not matter in terms of final score prediction, in terms of final score and outcome.
You know, I joked around with you on this before we even started this show, that if it comes down to that, why don't you throw Easton Stick out there? Honestly, I'd like to see everybody talk up Easton Stick. You know, we had a couple of these conversations in the preseason. Let's just see what you can do. The unfortunate part about that is if the starters don't play, you're literally going to be playing with the 2s and the 3s of the offensive line behind you. So what's that going to look like against the starters of the Denver Broncos? I don't know. So it's probably going to be a very dramatic shift in score for obvious reasons, Dan. So if the Chargers don't play their starters,
or play like a series or two,
or whatever, then I would advise, maybe you as a viewer go out and grab yourself some lunch. Maybe you don't want to look at the final score because it could be a lopsided affair to where I could see the Denver Broncos winning like 27-10.
I don't even think that, even if they lose, I don't think they lose by a lot. But I'm talking, I want to see Easton Stick. I want to see Storm Norton out there the entire game. I want to see Foster Sorrell out there the entire game. I would love to see all the folks that are on the practice squad. I'd love to see some Michael Bandy out there. I'd love to see some JT Woods out there. Like, just throw them all out there. Like, let them get their reps. They need reps.
How about this, Dan? How about this?
And I don't even want to see Dicker the kicker out there.
Well,
like,
no, I just thought about this for a second. Just a random thought, because especially when we heard after the Miami game that Joe Reed was essentially being the Tyreek Hill in the scouting.
Joe Reed, yes, please.
If this game does not mean anything,
I want him wide receiver too.
I would love to see him activated for this game. Yeah. Go on, go on, dude.
Go off, please.
Yeah.
That would be great. Honestly, it would be such a great Chargers Bolt fam block party, just watching 4 stringers go to town. Like, that'd be my dream. That's like a dream week 18 for me. It's sitting back, the whole team's sitting back. You got Justin Herbert somewhere booing, saying, we should be booing, we should be booing, we should be playing. That's my dream. So hopefully dreams can come true this Sunday. Jake, went a little long today. Anything else you want to tell the great friends of Chargers Unleashed and LAFB family as we head into week 18, which is crazy. We're already in week 18. Like, that's flown by.
It's crazy that we're in week 18, but it's crazy that we're doing a podcast beyond week 18 for the first time on this show.
That's true. This is not the last episode.
Correct. So normally we would probably be talking about Black Monday, talking about who's going to get fired. And for everybody who's looking to see Joe Lombardi and Brandon Staley not be in their positions with the Chargers this season, at least with Brandon Staley, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but he'll probably still be remaining. So all of these Sean Payton talk and everything like that pretty much goes out the window. Joe Lombardi, I don't think he's out of the woods yet, but let's see what happens come playoff time. Again, I still have voiced that I have my own criticism about him, and it's not going away soon until something changes. But yeah, Dan, just in general, we're going to be talking playoff football, and to all of maybe a little bit of my dismay that, yeah, we're not talking about draft prospects either. That comes later.
It's exciting. And to kind of cap it off, Jake, we have a tremendous, for folks who are still listening, you've listened in for a good point, because we have a tremendous guest joining us tomorrow to talk about said Week 18 and said playoffs. Not going to spoil it.
Don't even give a clue.
Okay, no clue. For Jake Hefner, you can find him forward hat today and his full belly from Chipotle at Jake D. Hefner.
Damn right.
Myself, look a little haggard today, not gonna lie, at Dan W Sports. Guys, gals, thank you so much for tuning in to Chargers Unleashed. We'll talk to you tomorrow on the next Chargers Unleashed.